No, that's the other way. So the wider it is, the more likely you are to have a bead pop. Because even at low air pressures, if the rim is fairly narrow, it's actually forcing the beads to stay where they are because the physical stature of the tire wants to do this. Because your bead bundle has steel cords in it. It's steel cable inside the bead bundle. It doesn't matter if it's a bias tire or a radial tire for tread and sidewall in that respect, but a wider wheel at lower air pressure is more likely, if you side hill it or side load it or curb check it, to push the bead off.
This Jeep Talk Show episode is brought to you by realtruck.com. Hey, get where you're going, then keep going. Gear, parts, and accessories built to explore well beyond where off-road goes off-grid. Get real deals on performance parts and off-road accessories at realtruck.com. Hey, this episode of the Jeep Talk Show is brought to you by Windshield Defense. Adventure doesn't wait for a cracked windshield. Windshield Defense by Racing Optics is like a screen protector for your phone. Triple layer, race tested, and installs in just 20 minutes. Save 20% with code JTS20 at windshieldefense.com. The clear choice. All right, here we are for another flagship episode. I am Tony, and welcome to the Jeep Talk Show. On tonight's episode, Greg and I recap the weld-on versus bolt-on sliders that we talked about last Tuesday's flagship episode, and on the roundtable, which was Wednesday. It was an interesting conversation, and Greg and I kind of chatted about it on the next day after the roundtable. So we're gonna bring you up to speed on kind of that chat that he and I had. And wheels, what we're going to be talking about on this week's roundtable, and so we're going to talk about it tonight. Wheels, what's important before you buy some, and also coming up on tonight's episode and on the roundtable, knuckles, steel versus aluminum. What the hell, Jeep?
That's a hot one for debate.
Yes, I think so too. But it saves you a nickel over 20 years in gas mileage. So you gotta do it.
Pass.
Yeah. Greg, tell us about you.
Hey guys, it's Greg Nickel, lead tech and installer, Platinum Drivetrain Works in Hutto, Texas, satellite shop to the ever so famous and popular Platinum Off-Road up in Rockwall, Texas, owned and operated by Mike Etherington. Happy to be here and with everybody this evening.
Do you go to the duck thing, the duck festival? It's where Rockwall. It's in Rockwall, right?
Yep, it's in Rockwall. I think originally that one, if memory serves, because I know we've discussed it before, it started out as a non-Jeep related
That's
event.
Right.
It was.
Yeah,
it was.
And
just
somebody somebody suggested. I think it was Mary. Is like, Mary, there's a thing with ducks and Jeeps. Did you know about that?
Oh yeah.
No.
Then it blew up.
Yeah, they were doing this.
No.
They basically have like a little stream system, manufactured, man-made stream system there, and they put your duck with a number on it. You can adopt a duck. You can't buy one because that's just wrong. But you can adopt a little toy duck, and it floats down the deal. And whoever makes it to the finish line first, this is recent too, over the last 2 or 3 years, you win a Jeep. I mean, they're literally giving away a Jeep. Oh, you don't know about this? They're literally giving away a Jeep.
I've never been to one. I've only heard about them. I've never attended one. So that's,
and you actually don't have to attend to win. So, and there's second and third prizes too. But yeah, it was really funny. I think it was 3 years ago that we interviewed Mary and one other person from the group, because it's a charity thing, and it was their first year giving away a Jeep, and we had her on the roundtable. Which we have guests on the roundtable from time to time, and several people from the Jeep Talk Show folks, the listeners, the team members and stuff, adopted some ducks, and one of them
what's the going rate for the adoption fee? What do they get for that?
$10, I think, is for
see?
the duck. Yeah,
man, so you got a chance to win a whole Jeep.
Yeah,
it's kind of a no-brainer.
One of our Jeep Talk Show team members. I think he bought a 10-pack for like $90 because you buy 10, you get it for less.
Get a little discount, yeah.
And so we now call him the bastard because he won. So one of the Jeep Talk, yes, one of the Jeep Talk Show people.
Can you
won
imagine
the Jeep? Yeah, he had just bought a Ford Raptor. He has an LJ, and his name is Andrew. Andrew the bastard. Yeah. So
Andrew the bastard.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I mean, congrats, Andrew, at the same time.
no, hell
You
with
know,
him.
but you lucky duck son of a bitch.
Yeah. And then last year when they were giving away the Jeep, they didn't just give away a Jeep, they gave away a modified Jeep. I think Platinum Off-Road is one of the people that put
One of the sponsors.
made them made the modifications to it, or at least bought some of the modification stuff on it. And so a young lady got won the Jeep, and she never had a Jeep, has been interested in a Jeep, and not only did she get a Jeep, she got one that was more off-road capable. I can't say off-road capable, but had been modified with tires and limbs.
That's still pretty damn cool if you think about it.
Oh, it really is. And they're doing it again this year. Also, another modified Jeep this year.
Okay,
so Mary,
well, I can
Mary's going to be
spare
joining us.
$100 for duckies. I'm gonna have to get in on this.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
no.
tired of waiting on my V8 swap. I need something else to drive.
I'm teasing this thing, and I don't have the information. This is just off the top of my head that I was talking about this. It wasn't in the show notes. I think it's like Rockwall Duck Regatta or something.
That sounds right. Sounds close.
I'm just looking it up really quick so I can tell people where to go. Rubber Duck Regatta. Adopt ducks, win a Jeep. Adopt ducks now. And you go to Rockwall Race. Read it without reading glasses. Rockwallduckrace.org. Rockwallduckrace.org. So that's where you go. You can buy the tickets now. I think it's coming up in October when they're having the event. So, and it's in Rockwall, Texas.
Tell everybody what the charities are that they help. Because that's kind of no, they don't have it on there. I figured they'd have it on there.
I see something here at the bottom that says Grace Clinic.
Grace Clinic.
Did I mention I don't have my reading glasses on, and you're asking me to read stuff?
Yeah. You want me to look it up?
Boys and girls clinics. Yeah. Anyway, just go over the website and you can see what charities that are there.
So it's a charity for kids in need.
Yes.
Like, okay, that's enough said. If you need any other details than that, then just, yeah. Adopt some duckies, win a Jeep.
Yeah. And then say you're doing it for the kids. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the sliders thing. So I'll just say, I think you crawfished a little bit on the round table. You were this is how you do things last Tuesday when it was you and I. But it was like, well, don't crawfish, man. Tell these people it needs to be weld-on. I think you had a very good point. And I mean, it's not that the people in the Zoom room, the people in the round table didn't have a good point, but I mean, it's like I told you on that show on the round table, there's a right way of doing it. Do you want it to protect your Jeep or don't you? And I think that's where we are with this, isn't it? I mean, if you want to protect your Jeep, it needs to be well built and it needs to be attached to something that's going to hold it in place and not bend up into your Jeep.
That was why it wasn't so much crawfishing, it's just trying to delineate the difference between, like, if you just say weld-on versus bolt-on, the key thing that's being left out is where on the vehicle it's being attached and how.
Oh, do you think you can have bolt-on that's not going to bend up?
I have, just like in the round table, and I've seen some of the newer styles that, like the other guys were talking about, where you actually have the rocker armor that's affixed in the correct places, like the Moto-Built system or the Genrite system, where it provides additional mounting surface for the slider assembly, not just the pinch weld or the body mount bolts. So like that's the main difference between the newer versions, like what we were showcasing on my old crappy ones. They don't have that additional support on the body. So that there is a definitive lack of structural support there. And they pivot on the pinch seam and bend up. Whereas a set that's welded properly to the chassis, and the guys there was really good points made, like we don't ever just take a piece of square or round DOM and stick it to the chassis by itself. You have to have a fish plate, some gusting. There has to be something else there, because the fact remains, as was pointed out during the roundtable, the frame material thickness is normally significantly thinner than any aftermarket quality rock slider assembly you're going to get your hands on for reasonable money. We're not talking about, just all the really crappy ones made out of exhaust tube that are strictly for looks. I'm talking about ones you're going to use. So if installed properly, yes, body mounted ones can hold up to a fair amount of abuse. Does that change my stance on like how I use my personal rig? Absolutely not, because I don't want the body being the foundation for anything that's that level of structural need. Again, I'll stand by what I said because I don't feel like I'm backpedaling. You're Swiss cheese in the sheet metal to put the armor on to protect the sheet metal.
Yeah.
You've destroyed the thing you're trying to protect.
So when you say fish plate, what's a fish plate? Is that square rectangular looking thing that you?
It can be. You can shape it however needed. I've seen them all different ways. So if anytime that you're like butt joining two pieces of steel together this way, or you're, like say this is your frame rail and we're coming in with a piece of DOM, I don't want that one weld to be the only contact surface I have.
Yeah,
of course,
that
I'm
makes
holding my hand
sense.
this way. It
It's
would
a
be
strength
this way
issue.
coming out from the bottom. Right. So you take a larger piece of thicker metal and weld it to whatever your substrate, your foundation is going to be. So in the case of a frame rail on a JK, like my 3-link mounts that are all frame side mount, they're not just brackets welded straight to the frame. They have pre-bent encompassing pieces that fit into the frame or around the frame. So you basically, it's just like with body armor, you're spreading the load.
Right.
Your welds go around the perimeter. Some of them, like if you're doing a butt to butt, like guys that do C notches on pickup trucks to do drop airbags, you don't just weld, the C truss on there. You have to. It can't just butt weld. I mean, I guess you could, but that's not ideal. You want to spread those loads in that weld out because of all the structural stress that's being imparted on it. It's the same thing with your rails. It's the same thing with if you're attaching a roll cage directly to the chassis. And there's different ways to do it. And I believe it was it Greg one that mentioned that
Henderson,
he makes a male female socket for his sliders. You can do similar, just like an engine mount. You can do the same thing for roll cages for trail use rigs that aren't competition use, where you have an attachment point that's off the chassis with a spar or an outrigger, and then you have a place where you can either plate or round bushing or whatever for the rest of the cage at that point. So in that case, if you want or need the body separation, frame separation, like the guys were talking about, or you need to remove it to do something with the body, then you can just simply unbolt the thing. Now that's kind of a mix of bolted and welded.
Right.
Not personally how I would do it on mine. If I'm doing it on mine for what I'm doing, and again, I have to stress, what I'm doing with mine is not the average Jeeper that's trying to go out and do good time fun stuff. I mean, I'm really pushing my rig a lot harder than your average Jeep owner ever would. But that being said, my life and my ability to get home both depend on it. My family depends on that safety factor. So I'm going to over-engineer and overbuild whatever I can. No fuses, no weak links. But that's, for me, you don't need to go to that much extra effort and expense if you're weekend warrior overlanding. Yes, as we discussed, shit can happen and you want to be prepared for that. But I think what was taken out of context that, a couple of the guys were like, well, you're saying if it's not done your way, then it's just bad. Well, no, that's not what I was saying. It's
I'm
my
good with
preferred.
That. That's the Tony
my preferred
way.
method. I don't want it bolted on there. I just don't. I mean, and again, the cheap ass post, sleigh poison spider sliders that I have are some of the worst ones you can get because they're not first gen, they're not even second gen. These are post buyout shitty.
That's such
cheap.
a shame. We talked about that in the roundtable. It's such a shame because Poison Spider to me was a really good name. I never bought anything from them. Yeah,
Poison Spider, Avalanche, Instagree, Rubicon Express. There's tons of them that all were there at one point or another, and since then either don't exist or have been bought out, and they just are they're selling parts based on a previous built reputation and a name. That's it. So again, buyer beware. Do your own homework. Don't just pick it because it looks like it's the most expensive or because it's the most cheap.
Or even if it has a name that you recognize, you need to check and find out what's going on with the company because things could have changed.
And there's lots of them out there that do really good stuff. We talked about a lot of the different brand names on the roundtable that are all very respected, high quality components that will fit almost any budget, from medium to high. So you don't have to feel like you have to skimp, go cheap on that. You don't need to. You can get quality stuff for not a whole lot of money.
Right.
It's just for purposes of hardcore intense use, that's not something you want attached to the body. And my rig is like the poster child for that right now. Unfortunately, I really do wish I had never put those things on there.
Well, I
They were
mean,
free. They were
but
free.
you're
So
but you're in a situation where you can change them anytime you want to. It
yeah,
just depends on
yeah.
what you do. You have a pipe bender at the shop? Can you actually build your
I do
own?
not have it. I don't have a tubing bender currently at the shop. I do have access to one, so that helps.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
the
between Mike
DOM
and
is
I, we can. Yeah.
yeah, the DOM is still very expensive, though, isn't it? I mean, it probably still
It
would cost you
can.
$200-300.
It varies depending upon wall thickness and diameter and stuff. I mean, all those things contribute to what the cost is. I think the last time I priced, a decent 120 wall or something better, 134 wall, it was 20 something bucks a foot. But
So
again, we're
actually,
diving
that's a
into
good.
a realm where there's a lot of Jeep owners that aren't going to be like Greg one or like me that are going to fab our own stuff. Like
Right.
you mentioned, people want to be able to do it themselves. They don't want to have to pay somebody extraordinary amounts of money to install things that they can bolt on with simple hand tools.
Yeah.
I mean, the fanciest tool you need to do any of that's going to be the riv nut tool. That's it. The rest of it's
Right.
just basic tools. So
I would feel awkward about putting on sliders that had riv nuts, though. I was like, no, I don't think so.
yeah,
So let me ask you, before we get too far away from this, let me ask you,
sure.
wall thickness. So if somebody's looking for sliders, I didn't even think about this before. You mentioned the wall thickness of the DOM.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at sliders online, I mean, I think if you go to Motobuilt, that's a safe place to go. But maybe you don't want to do Motobuilt. What kind of wall thickness would you be looking for rock sliders?
Minimum of 120, and that's probably not enough. 134 would be where I'd start and then go up from there. I mean, the stuff that I was using for my lower control arms was quarter walls, 0.250. So you can build it however thick or thin you want, just as long as you understand.
So 0.25, you're talking about a quarter of an inch.
Quarter of an inch thickness.
Wow.
I could bend 2-inch diameter quarter wall DOM lower control arms at will. That's why my lowers have been swapped out for it's 2
and you sound like you're proud of that.
Yes and no, because it's like if you think you've built it tough and then you go out and really beat on it and you find out where the weak spots are and you go, okay, well,
that's how you learn.
Because everybody that gets on social media to want to build their own 3-link or 4-link suspension without buying a kit or something that's pre-engineered, that's like the go-to. For buggies and aftermarket or home built stuff. So, you need 2-inch quarter wall DOM. That's all you need. And then legit guys figured out you can bend that stuff easier than you think. And it depends upon how you're using it, the lengths, et cetera.
Yeah, anything's bendable.
Yeah.
You just want to do the best you can do. Oh, we were talking about before we got started about questions for the show. This is a good question for the show. This ought to piss off some vendors out there. You want to ask us what a Jeep Talk Show recommended or a Greg recommended slider? Send us in the question. What would you recommend?
Yeah.
Let us know what Jeep you have, make, year, and model. Of course, the make will be Jeep, but let us know if it's a Gladiator, a TJ, anything. I mean, this is stuff that Greg, say your last name for me. Is it Nickel?
Nickel. It's an Irish German thing. Nicholl. So it's pronounced like a coin, but it's spelled different.
So if I had a nickel for every time that happened, that would be you.
Yeah.
That's how you say that.
Nichol,
spell differently.
Or Nickel or Nichol, or I've heard it all different kinds of ways.
Because on the round table, we're going to call Greg one Henderson, and we're going to call you Nickel. So I want to make sure I was pronouncing it correctly.
I don't get to be Greg 2 anymore?
If you want to be, you can. I just thought it'd be better instead of doing this Greg 1, Greg 2 stuff, because somebody's going to say Greg. And you're going,
and then both of us are going, what?
I'm thinking ahead. All right. So send us a question if you're concerned about what sliders you should put on your Jeep or really anything, because we could talk to any part of it. I've got opinions on everything. Nickel here has actual information, good information, can-do information from, which is different from me. I just kind of go by what I think. And sometimes it's good. I think most of the time it's good. But
if it
always
feels
defer.
Good, we're supposed to do it, right?
No, I'm not going to go there. All right. So, was there anything else more? Anything more? Yeah. Well, there was I was watching a thing, and it was actually the guy that I forget the name of the show. It's a kind of a British show. It's about it's a comedy about them being on a cruise liner in space, and there was an American astronaut on that ship, and it had a lot of problems, kind of like the Titanic type thing. and they were talking about sex, and he makes kind of this handed comment. He goes, "Well, a hole's a hole." So that's why I say, whenever you say if it feels good, do it. I draw the line. He was a little more free thinking than I was. So anyway, was there anything else you wanted to add? Not to the hole's a hole, but to the whole slider thing before we move on.
Yeah, no, it really does come down to, what your budget can tolerate, and then what you honestly intend to do with the Jeep. If you know that you're going to be going out on certain types of terrain, that those chances are higher than not that you're going to get into it. You're going to side check into it or slip off it. I mean, don't waste your time with the piddly stuff. Get something substantial and get it under there. Otherwise, if you're just going for style and you don't off-road the thing, I mean, yeah, you put it on there with sheet metal screws, I guess, and don't worry about it, because it's a step at that point. It's not really a slider. So I think a lot of
But
people.
we're not saying getting anything with steps. You don't want anything that hangs down.
If it's hanging down that far, it's a hindrance. It becomes something to hang up on a rut or a tree root or a rock or something else, or just unnecessarily tear up, because you don't realize that it's sticking off the bottom of your slider like that. And some people like that look. Some people actually need them. If you're a person,
well, they don't know any better.
Limitations, yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, to me, that seems like that's more often the case than not. Because if you don't know, if you haven't taken the time to research it, and you're depending upon the social
you're looking
media
at pictures.
Experts,
Yeah, you're looking at pictures and you see that
or
looks
you call
cool.
one shop and you talk to one service advisor that's just trying to make that commission sale. Like, he's not going to spend the time to try to educate a customer one at a time on the ins and outs of the different styles. He's going to sell you what you think you want and go on. So it really does come back to us as consumers understanding what we're asking for, what we want, versus how we're going to use it and how much it's going to cost. So
I remember before I had my first Jeep, I wanted a Wrangler, and I think at the time it was like YJ's way back when, and I wanted a YJ and I didn't know what it was called, but a friend of mine at work told me it was a Nerf bar. So I wanted a YJ with a Nerf bar. You don't know. You don't know till you know.
Purely aesthetic.
Yeah,
it serves no purpose
cool.
other than the look. It looks the part, and that's about it.
It's like you said, the muffler tubing.
Yeah,
I mean, if you guys don't know,
3 or 4 inch diameter exhaust pipes, all they are.
Yeah, so the muffler tubing is not, it bends very easily. It's meant to be light, and all it has to do is keep the gas inside of it until it gets to the end. So it's very lightweight stuff. All right, good conversation. All right, so now we've talked about the bolt-on versus weld-on sliders, and let's talk about wheels. Do you know anything about wheels?
Oh, yes, a little bit. And boy, howdy, that is a rabbit hole waiting to happen.
People love to get wheels. I mean, really, when you're modifying your Jeep, for me personally, that is the two wonderful things to do your Jeep is wheels and tires. It makes such a radical difference to the look. It goes from pedestrian or civilian look to hardcore off-road vehicle.
More purpose-built.
Yes. Yeah. It really stands out.
I mean, with all the options that are available these days and have been for quite some time, it really is just as much for a lot of people an aesthetic value choice as it is an actual component performance choice. So, and you can mix and match those up. I personally run KMC Beadlocks. I've got the 235 grenades under mine. They're a 17 by 9.5. I've had them for 6 or 7 years now, other than replacing the ring gear bolt or the lock ring bolts a few times over the years. I haven't had any issues out of them. Are there better ones out there than KMC? Yeah. If money were no object, I'd have some custom Trail Readies or Hutchinsons or something like that.
Right.
But, at the time when I bought them, it was the best that I could afford to fit in my budget for what I wanted to do. And they have worked out beautifully. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of the factory wheels, it seems like most people either dislike the factory wheels because of the styling itself. They're just like, it looks like everybody else's factory Jeep.
Right.
Like you said, I want to set my Jeep apart. And a lot of times it does come back to the actual physical specs. A factory Jeep wheel under a JL or a JT is going to have a whole lot more backspacing than an aftermarket wheel would normally have the option for. And where people get confused when they start looking at those numbers, because you hear about offset, you hear about backspacing, you hear about this, Really, it boils down to two simple numbers. Backspacing is where the wheel flange, where it actually mounts to the hub, and they measure from that spot to the inside edge of the bead, out there at the outside. That is your backspacing. Okay. Offset is where the amount of distance between the front or the back of the wheel from the wheel mounting surface. So you can have negative or positive offset with different backspacing, mix and match, blah, blah, blah. Like in my case, my particular wheels are 3.5-inch backspace with a minus 38 millimeter offset. And what that equates to is basically 3.61 inches or so worth of backspacing overall because of a negative offset. So you make those decisions based on clearance. You make those decisions based on how wide a tire you're going to run versus how tall. Obviously, like a 35 1250 series tires, 35 inches tall with a 1250 12.5-inch section width. Remember, kids, section width is not the tread, it's the sidewalls on the designated, approved rim width. A 35 1250, no problem on a 6-inch wide wheel, 7-inch wide wheel, 8-inch wide wheel. You could shoehorn them onto a 10-inch wide wheel if you really want to. Bear in mind, the wider the wheel, the more you're pushing out the sidewalls and pulling the tread down, because we're stretching the beads out wide. So you want to balance that. The general, I don't want to call it rule of thumb because nobody likes that these days, but the general idea is we don't want our section width of the tire to exceed 4 or 5 inches of whatever the rim width is. So on a 8-inch wide wheel, you really don't want to go much more than like a 13 or 13.5-inch section tire. That'd be about as wide as you'd want to stuff on an 8-inch wide wheel. Ish. Again, there's so many caveats to this. What are you doing with it? What style of tire is it? What kind of air pressures are you running all the time? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am a big fan
airing
these
down.
days.
I mean, you have to be really careful about the size of the wheel and the size of the tire. If you get them too far off, if the wheel is really skinny and it's pulling the tire in where the beads are, now when you air down, you're more likely to break a bead. Correct or incorrect? Hey, when Jeep unveiled the return of the Gladiator in 2018, fans rejoiced. The returning model, which pulled significant inspiration from the JL Wrangler, was Jeep's first modern attempt at a pickup truck. Before the JT Gladiator, Jeep's previous truck offerings, like the original Gladiator and the follow-up XJ-based Comanche, met their fates in the late 80s and early 90s, respectively. Officially released in 2019 for the 2020 year model, the Jeep Gladiator met initial success with solid sales figures. Though interest in the truck has dropped to an extent, die-hard Jeepers still respect the Gladiator for filling a void in the previously untapped off-road-centric mid-size truck market. If you're interested in purchasing a JT Gladiator but aren't sure which model is right for you, Real Truck has you covered. In this feature, we are covering everything there is to know about Jeep Gladiator trim levels, including what they are, what they represent, and the standard features of each of the offers. Now, you can read more about this over on realtrucks.com blog, realtruck.com/blog. Just do a search for Jeep Gladiator trim levels explained. Hey, Jeepers, Tony here for the Jeep Talk Show. You didn't choose a Jeep for gas mileage, you chose it for freedom. The freedom to explore, to escape, and to go where the others can't. But nothing kills that freedom faster than a cracked windshield keeping you off the trail. Windshield Defense by Racing Optics is your insurance policy for adventure, triple-layer protection that's been battle-tested and on racetracks and proven on back roads. It fits your Jeep, Bronco, Ineos, G-Wagon. Basically, it's any rig that refuses to stay on the pavement. Here's the beauty. When your windshield takes a beating, you just peel off the outer layer and boom, you're back to seeing the world clearly. No shop visits, no downtime, no excuses. Freedom isn't free, but protecting it just got cheaper. Use code JTS20 at windshieldefense.com for 20% off and free shipping. That's windshieldefense.com, because your adventure shouldn't end with a rock chip. Windshield Defense, the clear choice.
No, that's the other way. So the wider it is, the more likely you are to have a bead pop. Because even at low air pressures, if the rim is fairly narrow, it's actually forcing the beads to stay where they are, because the physical stature of the tire wants to do this, because your bead bundle has steel cords in it. It's steel cable inside the bead bundle. It doesn't matter if it's a bias tire or a radial tire for tread and sidewall in that respect, but a wider wheel at lower air pressure is more likely, if you side hill it or side load it or
Right.
curb check it, to push the bead off. Again, some aftermarket wheels, if you've ever had a wheel, a tire off your wheel and you notice there's a little hump right next to where the bead normally rides, that's called the safety bead inside the wheel. A lot of aftermarket manufacturers make that safety bead where it's made into the wheel more aggressive than a standard factory wheel to help stave off inadvertent pushing of the bead bundle. The 2003 TJ Rubicon was one of the first ones from the factory to offer that, and that's why those 16-inch alloys, the 5 spokes on the Rubicons, were so special. That was one of the reasons. It had a more aggressive bead bundle that would allow for lower air pressures without having to go to aftermarket wheels.
Boy, they just did an amazing job.
It was really cool.
The first Rubicon.
It was really cool. And that's one of those little details that your average wheeler didn't think about, have any idea about, didn't even consider. Dual beadlock versus a single beadlock. What's a beadlock, Greg? Okay, beadlock in the simplest of terms is the wheel has a face on it with bolt holes and threaded inserts, and there's a ring. You put the tire on, and instead of the bead of the tire going over the lip of the rim and seating with air pressure, it gets clamped between the beadlock ring and the face of the wheel.
And you mechanically attaching the tire to the wheel. Yeah.
And if done properly, that tire ain't going nowhere. Now, that doesn't handle the inside bead. You have to get into a true dual beadlock, and there's different versions. They've got ones that have rings on both sides. You've got some that are split, like your old Hummer wheels, the Humvee wheels in different flavors. Hutchinson, there's a couple others. I can't think of all the names are off the top of my head, but the rim actually splits in the middle, and there's an O-ring in there. And so you put the two halves through front back of the tire, and then it bolts together with the O-ring and the bolts in the middle. And that's just like a Humvee wheel,
Right.
And you can run an insert if you want to. That's the run flat inserts that you see from
that's
the
way I
spec
think
wheels.
It doesn't look as cool because you don't have the ring or the bolts and stuff, and it's not all look, that's off-roady. When you have the
what
insert,
you're looking at, you realize what it is. But
it's basically an inner tube. It's basically an inner tube for your tire, and you inflate it, and it presses against the bead on the inside.
You're like the Coyotes. Yes. The Coyotes are that style that are inflatable. But then you've got like the regular ones, like from the military Star. It is literally a hard rubber molded piece that it's kind of a funky shape. So it's got
that's going to be fun to install.
Oh, they're not. They suck. The shoulders push against the inside bead bundles of the rim, and then the center portion of it is the run flat portion. It has like a raised part like this. So if the tire goes all the way out of air pressure, like a bullet hole in combat, that's the military design.
Or if you're running from the police and they use one of those spike strips.
Yeah, the spike strips, that hard rubber piece inside of there lets the tread of the tire right against it. So you just keep on trucking. It'll trash the tire eventually, but you can still move and at speed. If you do some of the aftermarket ones that use the military design split rims, they have it's a piece of PVC pipe, the blue, like sewer pipe that you see on road construction sites. They literally cut sections of that to your spec for whatever rim width you're running, and you have to shoehorn that sucker in the tire and then put the two halves of the rim together with the O-ring in there and torque all your bolts. And that big tubular piece of plastic forces the inside of the bead bundle against the outside edges of the rim and locks it all in place. No rings. It's all in the middle of the wheel as far as your hardware goes. Some people, I'm not a huge fan of steel wheels anymore. I've seen some really, really cheap, shitty ones.
That was the go-to thing. Popular. You always wanted steel wheels because you can bend them back.
Field repair. Yes, super easy. The problem is the quality of them has declined to the point that it's just not worth it anymore. If you're going to drop $50-$60 on a steely that's not even a beadlock, when you can get into an entry-level alloy non-beadlock wheel, for $90 or $100, lighter weight. Yeah, they're not always as easy to fix, but again, that you also have to ask yourself, how am I driving?
Buy another one.
What air pressure? If I trash one of my alloys, it's not that big a deal to replace it. Whereas, I've seen it, the really bad thing that I don't like about the modern crop of steelies, if they're not like super high quality name brand stuff, like Stockton wheel or one of those, Trail Masters are shitty. The knockoff, they're not Mickey Thompson, but like Pro Comp's got some knockoff stuff that looks like the Mickey Thompson ones, but it's not. They just copied the designs. Those things are so the run out's horrible. They don't balance well. They're not as beefy. Like you and I are old enough to remember like legit steel wheels from back in the day. The wagon spokes, your rally wheels, stuff like that. The solid ones from Ford. Those things were stout. The Steelies you see these days are junk. They just are. They're not made to the same standards and the same quality materials that they used to be. So you're really not saving anything by, well, let's spend $60 a wheel instead of 90 or 100. When it gets to beadlocks, again, I am not a fan of steel wheels for that kind of abuse, because if you look at any of the aftermarket ones, the big option for doing it is the reinforcement ring that welds into the outside. Okay, and like Trail Ready, is it Trail Ready or yeah? I'll make sure I'm saying the right one. I think it's Trail Ready. They've got, their style is like the Humvee. It's the two dishes that bolt together, and they have reinforcement rings that they'll weld in there for you. And those are cool because you can get them different widths, different patterns. They can laser cut out, like the
Jeep Talk Shows logos all the way around.
You can do whatever you want. I mean, I've seen them with the trucker mud flap girl, the laid back girl on the trucker mud flaps. You can do all kinds of stuff with those things. But again, the price point goes significantly up for one of those in a custom flavor, a set of those, versus an off the shelf alloy beadlock. And the alloys, they're different. I'll give you a great example, and I'm not picking on anybody, but the Dirty Life beadlocks and the alloys, I'm not a huge fan of, because the way the beadlock function works versus where the tire bead ends up, how it centers and all that stuff, is not as user friendly as something like a KMC or a Hutchinson or something. I've done several sets for customers, and I'm like, yeah, the price point's good, but from an installer point of view, I don't care for them. Style wise, I'm indifferent. I mean, the grenades under mine look cool, but I didn't buy them because they look cool. I wanted beadlocks. That's what counts. I want the bead bundle retention. I don't, they were really shiny and pretty for the first couple of months, and after that, I don't care.
let me loop you back before we get too far away from this point. You were talking about the backspace and the offset. Yeah. I think that the general way of finding out what you want to put, what kind of backspace and stuff you want, is to go onto the online thing, go to Google and do a search, and you put in the year, make, and model of your Jeep and the size tire that you're going to use. Yeah. And but that's not really, just because the brain trust thinks it should be that way doesn't mean that's necessarily true. Is there any kind of calculator or anything online, or how would you recommend for people that are really concerned about getting the right size wheel before they do maybe a $300 investment in just one wheel, that they get the one that they really want?
So there are some out there. There are actually tools that you can buy, and they've got them in all different varieties that you can attach to the hub, and they've got little arms and pointers and stuff and slidey bits on them, and you can mock it up. And that's like the guys that are doing custom one-off sets of wheels, like for race cars or whatever. You bolt that thing to the hub and you have all your deals, and you can check for your clearance for rotation and how much is going to fit inside the fender well, like if you're doing a mini tub or a full-on tub job or something. So there's ways to do it like that. A really simple, effective way is just knowing what you already have. If it's a factory wheel and tire, you just simply take some reference measurements at different steering positions and kind of go from there. So if my factory wheel has 6+ inches of backspacing on a 245/70, and my tire is this far away from the coil bucket on the frame, I can use that as a reference point and do my math that way. It takes a little bit more doing and notes and stuff, but you can look at it that way and go, okay, well, if I change to 3.5-inch backspacing, my sidewall is going to be out here now. But if I do this much offset, whichever way, and you can kind of play with it like that. But it's not just fitting in it while it's sitting there. It's got to be lock-to-lock steering, and then considering your articulation. How much can you stuff that tire into that fender well, and how much will it drop out, and where's it going to move? Leaf spring trucks are going to react a lot differently than, fixed control arm vehicles will. Triangulated four-link is going to flex a lot harder than a standard parallel four-link will with a track bar. So again, you have to take time to All of that has to be taken in consideration. It can't just be there's no such thing as a one size fits all. You
Right.
know, I see
Well,
a lot
and
where
this is
folks,
the danger to looking it up online, is because
yep,
it's
yep,
it's right, except if you've done this, or except if and
yep.
that may or may not be involved in what you're looking up. So yeah, I mean it's a gotcha. So I'm assuming, based on what you're saying, is that if you're looking and you've got, yay much room, and now you have the backspace that you currently have with the stock wheels, and your tire is going to be X number of inches wider, take half of that, and that's how much room that space is going to take up. Now you can pretty much go, okay, well it's 2 inches wider, but I'm still within that area of space that I have, so I should be okay. So,
and your fender liner, I mean, and you can, if you want to get real creative with, popsicle sticks or a marker or whatever, you can leave your factory wheel and tire on there, put the thing up on a jack stand and cycle your steering back and forth, and make sure that, okay, if I go from my 245/70 to a full on 35/1250 or 37/1350, and in that imaginary space, where's that edge, that shoulder going to land when I'm turned all the way? Is my rock slider poking out too far? Is the flare going to be in the blah blah? You got all that stuff that you can kind of eyeball it and look at that and go, okay, what'll fit, what won't. Fortunately, there's been so many Jeeps built and modified over the years recently that you've got plenty of reference material with most of your local, Jeep enthusiasts. If when in doubt, just go look at one that has the size tire and wheel you want already on it. See what's right. Is his control arms got bare spots where the tires are rubbing at full lock, where it's knocking the paint off? Is his tread cut up from getting into the pinch weld inside the fender? You can look and see really easily if you just take a few minutes to poke. Okay,
so
this, and this.
there's a saying that we have here on the show: no modification goes unpunished.
None. one of my biggest pet peeves for a lot of off-road shops is they will sell you an aftermarket set of wheels with brand new big tires, and they will purchase you factory spec backspace and offset. And then they'll sell you a set of wheel spacers, because all of a sudden those wide ass tires won't fit with all that back spacing because it's all pulled under the fender too far and getting into everything. So now that you've laid out $3,000 or $4,000 for wheels and tires, you got to spend another couple $300 getting spacers to be able to drive the thing home.
Well, that's just good business. That's continuing business. I mean, there may be a lift involved. There may be
correct back spacing for the application the first time.
That's what suckers do. You can't make continuing business like that.
Trail Masters are one of the worst. Both their alloys and their steelies. They're like, it's the Temu of the wheel world. They're you can find better stuff on no-name stuff on eBay and Amazon than what I hate. Trailmaster to me is like, for wheels, is like Yukon is to me for gears. I'll just leave it there because everybody knows how I feel about the sad polar bear.
That's a shame. Yukon used to be so nice. It was a go-to. And that's one of the things we want to explain to you guys. So the searching the internet is a good idea. Asking the Jeep Talk Show what you think you should put on your Jeep is also another way you could go. So xjtalkshow.com/contact. I forgot to mention this earlier. xjtalkshow.com/contact. Over there and find out all the ways to reach out to us. All right. Was there anything else that you had on the wheels? And I know there's about another 3 hours of stuff that you have, but was there anything you wanted to mention before we move on to the next subject?
For the folks that are questioning whether or not to get beadlocks, do I need them? Is it worth it? When we air down, we are doing so to increase the contact patch, the tread of our tire, to better, increase our traction and to help the tire encompass certain obstacles, to form to the rock, to form to that tree root, whatever it is. There is a limit to how low you want to go. Beadlock or no, if you go too low, you're either going to bash into something and lip the tire on the rim and cut the sidewall, or you're going to damage the rim because there's not enough air pressure in there to cushion the impact. So it's very important to know. And again, there's no one size fits all when it comes to airing down.
It depends on the tire.
Depends on the tire, depends on the curb weight of the vehicle. It depends on what kind of terrain you're on, what you're doing with it. With a beadlock, it allows you to run lower than you could with a non-beadlock, but you're still, we'll use mine as much as I hate to as an example at this point. My tires are so thick and so big and so heavy that you can't tell the difference by looking at them if I've got street pressure or no pressure, just because they're so burly. A normal radial is not going to do that. And you have to keep in mind that ply rating on radials is very important for Jeeps. I see a lot of Jeeps these days running around on D and E and F range ply tires. We're talking 8, 10, 12, 14 steel belted ply radial tires. Those things are way too much for your average Jeep. Again, they get sold that way because metric sizes that are comparable to the standard sizes everybody wants, 35s, 37s, you get it in a metric size. They're more available that way, more styles available that way. But the problem is those tires are designed to be used under full-size trucks, heavy vehicles. A Jeep, even a heavy Jeep like mine, doesn't need more than a D range, regardless of what you're doing it. Now, my tires are bias ply. So this, what I'm fixing to say, doesn't apply to a bias ply. But on radials, you have to remember when you're airing down, that steel belting is only for the tread portion of the tire. That steel belting ends where the shoulder begins and it turns into sidewall. That's all polyester, Kevlar, whatever mix they're using from that brand. It's the tread only that's the steel belting. If you have a 10 or 12 ply steel belted radial and you're trying to run 10 or 8 psi in that sucker, you're forcing all of those steel belted plies into that shoulder area and trying to really make that tire wrap and flex. And what people get into when they're doing that is they realize, well, 10 psi had enough to make them really squat. So now I'm going to run them down to like 6. And you do that, you do that, and you do that. And before you know it, you have caused inadvertently that portion of the shoulder of the tire is going to be the first thing to go. So you keep that up over and over and over again for extended periods of time over, and it could be months, it could be years, whatever. But the point is that juncture in the tire construction becomes the failing point that wants to separate right there. So it's very important for the longevity of the tire, what we're using it for, and for cost. A C range radial is going to be significantly less expensive than a E or an F range. The guy behind the counter at your local shop that doesn't know any better is going to sell you the one that costs the most because he makes his money off a commission.
Right.
If you know better, it's just like with the sliders or anything else. You need to understand the whys and whats and educate yourself before you lay down big money on a set of new tires to go with your fancy new wheels, because you could very well end up getting something that you think looks great but is not going to perform the way you expect it to.
Right.
So
and
a lot of people get hung up on brand names and not so much the actual specs of a given tire. So
I actually have, and I'll just drop this in here real quick. I was just looked it up really quick to see, and I believe this is the right information for the tire that I have. I have the Nexen Rodian MTXs. It's not a tire I would have normally gone with, but I got invited out to a Nexen event in California, which I got to drive around on some Nexen tires, and I was really impressed with them. And I've been very happy with them on the Gladiator. I got them on the XJ as well. 33s on the XJ, 35s on the Gladiator. It is 35, 12.5 by 17, and which, that's good because that 17 fits the factory wheels, which I have. I'm able to turn lock to lock, no rubbing on anything with those, so I didn't have to buy new wheels when I went with the 35-inch tires. It has a speed rating of a Q. Apply rating is 12. And I think that might be...
That is a heavy tire.
Yeah, I think that might be the reason why that I can air down and you can't. It's like your situation. I can't tell. Yeah, I can't see it. Because I think I take it down to 14 psi, and it does not deflate. It does conform to surfaces when you're going over it, but just sitting there, you really can't tell.
You can't hardly tell. Well, and it's like that's why we don't like seeing an aspect ratio is big given the rim diameter. If you're one of those guys that wants to run an 18 or a 20-inch wheel on your off-road rig, you need to make sure that you've got enough sidewall to put up with that. Because a given diameter tire
absolutely.
on the 20, you're talking about 3 inches less. We depend on that sidewall for so many things when we're wheeling that it's real easy to forget that a rubber band tire on a big, fancy, pretty rim is great for the street, not really anywhere you want to be.
It makes the ride so much better, especially on those washboard situations.
Yeah, and you're more likely to damage the rim itself, the wheel itself. If you've got a sidewall that's like this versus like this, and you're rubbing up against rocks and roots and stuff, I mean, you might as well just put them up against the curb when you bring them home, because they're going to get scratched up your first outing, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do to help that.
So get this in your head, folks. If the factory wheel is 17 inches, stick with the factory size wheel, unless you're upgrading the brakes and you need the additional room, which I don't think.
Yep. See, the domino effect: bigger wheels and tires, brakes, your steering, all that.
But if you do,
steering,
it's just like what you're talking about. If you go with a larger wheel, you need a taller tire so that you can have that ratio of rubber. So when you air down, we air down a lot. We're not going to cover it on this show, but we're going to be covering airing down here in the future, because that was one of the things that you wanted to talk about, Greg. And I think it's another critical piece of information. So future episodes, stay tuned for that. But I recommend highly staying with the size wheel that you have, unless you're going to spend a lot of money and put a much bigger tire on. You need that. Think of that ratio. If I'm airing down, am I going to have any? Is it going to have any effect other than running on the wheel? All right, Greg. Yeah. So talking about steering, we're going to be talking about this again. We're talking about all these things on the Wednesday's roundtable episode. Just covering them here first. We're kind of getting a series of things. We want you guys to hear from Greg, the expert. Then we're going to hear from the people on the roundtable, multiple experts potentially. And then I just think it's a good idea to get a lot of input on these things that are important to you. And if you're buying wheels, that's a lot of money, and it's important to you. So another thing that you may have to put up with, another thing you may have to put up with is, especially if you have a new JL or JT, is aluminum knuckles. So, Greg, what do you think about aluminum knuckles? First off, tell people what knuckles are. I mean, all knuckles should be brass, right?
If you don't know what the steering knuckle is, and just go look under the front of your Jeep, you're going to see your wheel and tire. You're going to see your brake assemblies and all that stuff. And all of that attaches to a component that's called the knuckle. Your steering attaches to that, the hub and all the brakes and everything attached to that. And then the knuckle has your upper and lower ball joints, unless you're running ball joint eliminators, that attaches to the C, which is the outermost portion of the actual rigid axle housing. And that knuckle pivots as you turn on that C. And of course,
it allows you to go something other than straight.
Exactly. That's how your steering works. It was very obvious out the chute when they introduced those things that they were not going to hold up to sincere off-road abuse, mainly because the tapered bores for the steering and the upper and lower ball joints. If you're driving around on the street, if you're occasional, once in a while, really, 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 really mild wheeler, it's not a problem. Don't stress. If you just bought one and it's got those under it and you're still rocking all your stock setup and you're not beating on the thing, don't worry about it. You're fine. Go on about your business. Enjoy your Jeep. If you get to a point where you're ready to start getting into significant off-roading, and I don't care if it's light or hardcore, those knuckles are subjected to all kinds of harsh forces while we're wheeling. I'm not talking about pavement use. I'm talking about being on the trail. You have to think about it. Every time you smack into something, go over something, turn into something, turn out of something, those knuckles are being put under a lot of stress. The aluminum, as an attempt to lighten up things on the Jeep and save, save moving mass, they were trying to save weight. And it's just not ideal for off-road. I would see, ideally, aluminum knuckles are great for racetrack. That kind of controlled scenario where it's not subjected to what we do to our Jeeps. And I've seen too many of them in the last few years where those tapered bores have suffered immensely and created all kinds of issues. And there's techs out there that don't know to look for that because they're unaware of the issue. And they'll be chasing death wobble or some other kind of steering quirkiness, not realizing that that's what it is.
I would think wandering, like on the highway, wandering around would cause the issue.
Weird alignment specs, weird drivability specs, death wobble, shimmies, all that kind of stuff. Anything that you would expect from a worn-out ball joint or a worn-out tie rod end.
And the ball joint may be perfectly fine.
Yeah,
it's just the hole's too big.
It's that tapered hole that's in that knuckle. It's taking a beating and it comes undone.
It seems strange that they wouldn't sleeve it. They make aluminum blocks and then you put a metal sleeve. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, if you're going to save the weight, if that's really the reason why you're doing it, well, it goes back to the number of people that actually off-road their Jeeps, which,
Yeah.
at that point they're doing the additional expense for very, very few people. But fortunately, there are nice metal heavy duty knuckles that you can get.
Yep.
Now, the ones I always think of is Reed Racing.
Reed's one of the most famous ones, and their stuff is awesome. It's proven over and over and over again in real world competition use and enthusiast use. It's really hard to mess up one of their knuckles. Really hard.
And they're bright orange, so whenever you put them on, people can see them and go, "Ooh, what's that?"
You can get them raw if you want to, or you can strip them down. But no, those
I want them in red.
definitely.
Damn it.
Yeah, any of the anyone like that's doing it. There's some other brands out there that are just as worthy, but Reed is probably one of the most well known. They've been around a long time. They're very dialed in on what they're doing. Their components are awesome. Again, if you're doing any kind of what I would consider sincere wheeling, it's definitely a worthwhile expense to get rid of the aluminum and put some aftermarket.
Well,
if you find somebody that's doing a 1-ton swap and they've got the steel ones on theirs.
Oh yeah,
just grab their steel ones.
So the Rubicons, you were saying this earlier. The Rubicons, the Mojaves are the ones that come from the factory with the steel. So maybe if you could probably maybe go to the junkyard and pull the steel ones off of a damaged Rubicon. Mojave.
And honestly, a pick and pull is not going to give a shit about that because they don't. It's not like a 4-to-1 transfer case or a differential locker.
Yeah, they're not going to know.
Yeah. They're not going to give a shit. Oh, it's a knuckle. They're not going to carry.
And don't ruin it for us, people. Don't inform them. I've been looking for these everywhere. This is so great. Just shut up and get it and give them the $25 and go. I'm sure it's not $25. So yeah, I was going to ask you, as a differential shop, because you do multiple things, but as primarily a differential shop, would you say that's the time whenever you're doing something, maybe installing a locker?
Yeah, if we've got the gears out, if we're doing a locker, all of those components have to come apart to get the axle shafts out to remove the carrier. At that point, you've got the steering's disconnected, your hubs are off, the wheels and tires, with brakes, everything's off. It's an upper lower ball joint to get that knuckle off at that point. You're literally 4 fasteners away from having those knuckles off. That would be a beautiful time to do it.
If you're sleeving the axle, if you're putting a truss on, all kinds of things. Maybe you've got lockers already, but you're doing the trusses and everything
you're
else.
going to slap in some RCV axle shafts.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to
say. If you're just putting in shafts in the front end, say you've got a Rubicon and you want to upgrade to the Reeds and get rid of the factory ones. If that was an issue, boom, there you go. You're right there. Do it. So definitely worthwhile. I like to. Yeah, we're definitely predominantly at my shop gear and axle related work, but we also anything related to the axles as far as steering upgrades and repairs, brakes upgrades and repairs, all that kind of stuff. We'll tackle that all day long, easy peasy.
You probably don't care for this what steering components you use, but is there one that you favor? There's RPM, there's Steer Smarts, there's there one that you like over the other or dislike?
RPM. Hands down, we're an RPM dealer. Those folks have been so awesome over the years, and there's very few small business owners alike. And I don't like even calling RPM small business because their reach is so big right now, and they've got so many products available. But in their hearts, they are still small business. And when John and Michelle come around, that's like they make it a point every year where they will go to different parts of the country and visit all their dealers in person. And they came and saw me last year when they were in the area looking, at some of their other dealers. And that means the world to me as a small business guy, just before the shop changed up when I still owned it. That's huge. And their components, their products, both drag link, tie rod, and both my lower rear control arms are all custom made pieces from RPM. So they're all one-off parts that I had them put together for me. And I have everything under the rig that sees contact with the ground, other than the tires. Those components have held up amazing. And their warranty is hands down one of the best in the business. If you can bend one of their tie rods, they will replace it for free, no questions asked.
Now,
and it's really hard to find that anywhere else.
I forget the gentleman's name. I think you just mentioned it, but I've interviewed RPM before.
Don.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Do they just have aluminum or aluminum steering components, or do they
No,
have a
they've
mix?
got they've got a whole, if you go on the website, they've got stuff for just about damn near any Jeep you can think of, and you have different options, but by far the most popular and the most famous and well known is their T6 7075 offerings. And that's the grade of aluminum that they use. My tie rod or my rear, like my tie rod's inch and a half, drag link's inch and a half, and then my rear lower control arms are 2.25 diameter solid when they're threaded for the shanks on the control arm joints. You can bend that stuff upwards of 30 degrees, impact it, and it has the memory to go back to straight. You might maybe on a decent piece of DOM, inch and a half quarter wall or 2 inch quarter wall, you might get maybe 10 degrees of flex out of it, and it's probably still going to bend. So that's the main difference for me.
Yeah.
Again, not everybody's out
What's
there
your
bashing into stuff, but
yeah?
damn,
What's your
RPM's
opinion
really, really
with
nice.
what's your opinion aluminum versus steel? I'm a absolutely 100% steel person. The only thing I would consider it would be synthetic. So which is a common joke that I make because of steel cable and synthetic wood.
I custom made all of my own DOM control arms, my own DOM tie rod and drag link, and my own DOM front and rear track bars. And it did not take long to start bending the lower rear control arms and start bending the tie rod. I replaced that DOM tie rod 3 times before I finally laid down RPM money.
Oh,
And which isn't
interesting.
a big, yeah, you'd be, again, it only takes about 8 to 10 degrees worth of deflection on a quarter wall piece of inch and a half DOM under pressure to bend it and have it stay bent. And it sucks. Now there's ways around that. If you don't want to do the aluminum straight, you can slug DOM. I've seen guys put aluminum shafts inside of them, inside the DOM. I've seen them sleeve it with solid steel. I've seen them put smaller pieces of DOM inside to just help shore it up. And it works, but again, you're adding weight, you're adding extra expense, it's extra labor, blah, blah, blah. So by the time you go through all of that once or twice, it's like, well, I could just spend the money once on the RPM or equivalent style.
Yeah.
Julian of Summit Machine Works, god dang, she turns out some really, really nice stuff. Busted Knuckle, Berkey and the boys over there, they've got some really badass steel or aluminum stuff. Wide Open Designs does their own stuff, and there's a lot of them that do it in house and will make it to your order, whatever length and thread and all that stuff you need.
I probably would try aluminum if I had a lot of money. Because
It's not as bad as you think if you're not like buying a whole
I'm thinking
kit
of more
all
than
at
just
once.
steering components, bumpers,
Yeah.
skid system, the whole thing. Because
Well,
I can see it would be nice to have the Jeep and it weigh a little less.
that part, and that's where I will pick and choose, like you were just saying, on the strength of steel versus aluminum. A piece of T6 rated 7075 is going to put up with a lot more flexing and bending and stuff and stay true than even a 300M shaft will. Like I've seen 4340 steering. Rubicon Express had one that was real famous for a while for the JKs when the JKs started to come out, where it had press in 1-ton tie rod ends with drop forged outers, the actual tie rod end that the joint pressed into, and then the center was all chromoly steel, 4330. And those things were amazingly affordable for how they were made, but they have their limits too. And I was
Sure.
running that particular version on my Dana 44 before I did my ton swap, and I finally bent it. But to bend it, I had to really nail it hard. I did it at Wolf Caves, and I finally bent the thing. It didn't pretzel, but I bent it enough that it towed in my tires and I could feel it when I was driving home.
Yeah.
But
you were able to
yeah,
drive home. That was the big
I was
thing.
able to drive home. That's the main thing. It's like all this other stuff we're talking about. No good deed goes unpunished, and no mod comes without some sort of cost. How are you driving the rig? Do you want to, like, there are suspension kits out there from, like RPM has some really nice ones. All the links are that nice polished 7075. If you're buying it all at once like that, it's a big pill to swallow. But if you do it like I did mine, where I bought tie rod and drag link, and then 6 months later I had them do, I think, and this is probably about 3 years ago now, at least, maybe 4. I want to say my lowers, the 2.25 solid, they were 36.5 inches long each, drilled out for the 1.25 shank for my control arms, my heim joints. I think I paid 2.25, 250 a piece for them is what I paid, which isn't bad. if you think about the time it takes to machine it and thread it and do all that stuff and then ship it to you, $500 for a pair of
that's the nice thing about aluminum. Shipping is a nice thing about aluminum, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So let's say that there's somebody who's like, wow, this Greg guy, he's really great. I would really love for him to be able to work on my Jeep. Tell people again the name of the company, how they can, where you're located, and
absolutely,
and maybe a phone number they can contact you at.
Yep. Phone number's real easy: 325 area code 248-4000. That one's pretty simple. It's Platinum Drivetrain Works. We're located in Hutto, Texas. We're actually just outside the northern outskirts of town at a big industrial complex. And you can find us on Google. Just type in Platinum Drivetrain Works. It'll pop up. We're all over social media. I'm on Facebook. We got Instagram. And of course, the parent shop, Platinum, Off-Road. So it's really easy to find us. If you're not sure about the name, there it is. It's on my hat too. But yeah, sure. If you have any kind of technical questions, you just want to shoot the shit about your build ideas, anything like that, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I don't stop for lunch. I work through the entire day. So you can shoot me a DM on the social media. You can call me up. You can send text to that phone number as well. Pictures. It's the shop cell phone. So we can do all the normal
work-related pictures, ladies. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't want to piss off who. So please keep your scantily clad Jeep pics to yourself. I don't want to see that.
You would be okay, but when the wife looked at your phone, hey, what's going on here? What are you selling?
Don't send me anything like that.
She would think cool and that goes for guys too. No scantily pictures of.
I don't want to see you in your Daisy Duke draped over the hood of your Jeep, please.
All right, so I hope you guys are enjoying Greg as much as I am here on the show. What a wealth of knowledge, and it's we really appreciate it, Greg, and I'm glad you're here every week. So, and I think it's kind of therapy for you because you get to talk without having to worry about saying the right things to the customer, so that you don't have to upset them because maybe they want to go a direction that is a bad direction, but it's hard to say no.
It happens a lot, and I do my best with those folks to just help them as much as I can to understand, again, the whys, whats, and hows. And if they're dead set on whatever it is they want, be it a particular gear ratio or a particular brand or whatever, if so long as it's something we provide, like we don't sell or, we don't retail or sell Yukon parts. Don't ask me for Yukon. I can't get it for you. I'm not going to get it for you.
Well, if they can bring it to you, right?
Yeah. They can bring it to us. Yes, we absolutely will install customer supplied parts. The one caveat is there is no warranty on anything customer supplied. If you buy it from us and have me install it, you get the warranty that covers parts and labor, both from the manufacturer and from us. But if you bring me your own stuff, I'll gladly put it in. I just can't warranty any.
And I'm going to, for you folks that have never been through this, I'm going to just warn you about the nightmare, the finger pointing that goes back and forth between, this is like, I told you there was no warranty on it, but Yukon says it's your fault, and then you go back and forth, and it's just, I don't know anything this, I don't know that this has happened to you, Greg, but I have seen other situations like that, especially in the world of IT, in like routers and all kinds of things, depending on how you got it and how it was installed. Anyway, so again, we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to give us a question. There's many, many ways that you can give us questions. I mean, I'm seeing comments in Spotify, and we've actually had a few people that appreciated some of the stuff that we've talked about in the short time that you've been here, Greg, saying that they decided to go a direction based on what we had talked about. And so there's all kinds of ways you can reach out to us. So anyway, did this Jeep Talk Show episode get your engine roaring? Show us some love by dropping a 5-star rating and a blazing review on your go-to podcast platform. It's your way to help us expand our Jeep family. Keep the adventure rolling by hitting follow on social media and joining our newsletter for the most up-to-date information, including reminders for the roundtable. Got a burning question or a wild idea for our next episode? Fire it over to us at xjtalk.com/contact. Thanks for cruising with us and get ready for more thrilling journeys ahead. Greg, thanks again.
Thank you, Tony. We'll see y'all.
Broadcasting since 2010.
You're my friend. You're my new friend.